Oh yeah, there are tons of other issues with China, like the concentration camps, fucking insane. I do not support China at all, but it is one of those things. Seeker gatherer, thank you very much for the cheer. I appreciate it. Yeah, like this is part of the issue. Like, I don't support all of China's policies. All I am pointing out is that their economy is growing at like an unprecedented rate in human history. So like, whatever they're doing it effectively on an economic level. I do not, however, support concentration camps. I don't support the lack of human rights in China. I don't support any of these things. And what I strive for is largely the antithesis of this. I do not think that we should live in an authoritarian dictatorship. I think that we should live in a democracy, which, as flawed as a democracy is, it's the best system I know of for running a government. And I think that to that end, we should also introduce democracy to the workplace with worker co-ops. And I think that the government has a duty to provide basic things that allow citizens to live. You know that China's economy is supported primarily by the US, right? Without us, their economy collapses. Well, without them, our economy collapses. Like, yeah, we live in a global society, and it's largely global as a result of capitalism. Like, China has made themselves indispensable to global capitalism. This is why they're so successful. They leveraged their massive workforce in order to produce insanely cheap material for other countries, and by leveraging that workforce, in return, gained access to a lot of technology that they used to rapidly innovate and develop. So, like, yeah, obviously, they're supported by us, yeah. Would you be okay with it if I was the dictator? No, because I fundamentally reject dictatorship. Anyway. Yeah, without China, yeah, absolutely our economy collapses without China. Are you kidding me? China owes, I believe, the majority of US debt. Yeah. No, we would collapse without China. Why does no one complain about how China exports labor or exploits labor to bring iPhones to America? I do. I think that China's business practices are inherently exploitative, but I think that that is largely a result of capitalism and the lack of control that workers have over their workplace, which is why I would like to introduce a system that is antithetical to traditional business practices. Think we owe ourselves the majority of our debt, don't we? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would need to look that up, okay? I'll verify my facts for you, okay? Who owns US debt 2020? I might be using old data. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Here we go. I'll put it up on screen too, okay? So this is the U.S. Treasury security holders by type. As you can see, this bar at the bottom represents foreign investment in the United States. It is the largest category on this chart. Let's take a look here. Unless I'm reading it wrong. But anyway, it's a significant portion of the economy. Let's take a look. Who owns this foreign debt? Current foreign ownership of debt. In July 2020, Japan owed $1.29 trillion in U.S. treasuries, making it the largest foreign holder. So I was wrong about China being the largest. However, the second largest holder is China, which owns $1.07 trillion of U.S. debt. Yeah. So, yeah, China literally props up our economy. We would be in trouble if China suddenly pulled out of the U.S. economy, okay? This is, by the way, one of the reasons why a lot of people were like, "Hey, Trump, don't have a trade war with China, please." Oh yeah, nanoeconomics might be better suited to answering these questions. If we made iPhones in the U.S., completely removing China, we would to lower wages. Yeah, we would have to lower wages for those workers significantly. This is true. However, if you're working at a worker co-op, you have very little reason to move your factory overseas because all of you collectively work there. So if we want to stop this problem of factories moving overseas, companies moving overseas, we should want worker co-ops. It's one of the most effective ways to stop that from happening. And if we had worker co-ops, I believe that you would better be able to produce things like iPhones in the United States without the exploitation, or at least by minimizing the exploitation. Yeah. Not disagreeing, China is integral to our economy, just nitpicking. Most of our debt is owed to ourselves, according to the graph you showed. Is it? Let's see. I guess technically, yes, you are correct. So that's my I guess that's my general platform on worker co-ops and socialism. I got really intense there for a minute. But yeah, this Ben Shapiro video is laughably terrible, and it demonstrates an appalling lack of awareness about what he's talking about. So yeah. React to that video? I did. I reacted to the Ben Shapiro video already. Oh, you tried to post a link. Okay, didn't see that. Well, first we're going to cover some news. Seeker Gatherer, again, thank you for the bits. I appreciate it. Having Medicare for all would make sense to lower wages? Absolutely. Largely the reason private companies don't want Medicare for all is because it would increase the agency of their workers. You're more willing to leave a company if your healthcare isn't contingent on you working at that company. All right, let's take another look.
So let's say you...
All right. I guess I can react to another Ben Shapiro video. I don't have enough cancer yet in my body. All right. Socialist tells Ben Shapiro workers should own the means of production. I imagine how well this is going to go.
Own a pencil factory. I'm a worker in that pencil factory.
Wait, what? I'm already lost. Okay, let's see.
So let's say you own a pencil factory. I'm a worker in that pencil factory. You can have all the machinery, you can buy all the raw materials you want, but without me, and presumably many others like me, to assemble the pencils, all you would have is a pile of wood, yellow paint, graphite, rubber, and aluminum.
Okay.
That would
True.
be worth, and that is worth less than the pencil when you try and sell it. And yet, all of that value added by labor, apart from the wages that you give me, which, if we're being honest, there is a major power imbalance in our ability to negotiate that.
Yeah.
If all that putting the pencil together requires is basic use of your prefrontal cortex, then yes, your labor is alienable at lower rates than if you are a doctor. That's not the fault of the person who owns the machinery.
The issue with capitalism is not that these people should be paid as much as a doctor. The issue with what this young man is talking about is that again, I need to remark how quickly, and again, we're gonna slow down this video, okay? Because man, Ben Shapiro talks like he's on helium. So what this young man is saying is that in this hypothetical, there's someone who owns the capital, owns the factory, and then there are people who work for him, right? If these people did not work for him, all he would have is a pile of raw materials, and those aren't necessarily worth all that much. So what he's saying is, because this person who owns the factory has more money, he can dictate to these people how much he will pay them. However, the value of the pencils that these workers are creating is greater than what this guy already had. And the owner of all this machinery, simply by virtue of owning something, then gets to pocket all of the excess value that he has chosen not to pay his workers and keep it for himself without doing anything other than owning something. So that's the fundamental problem of capital here. So let's go to Ben Shapiro's response.
Ability to negotiate that. Well,
if all that putting the pencil together requires is basic use of your prefrontal cortex, then yes, your labor is alienable at lower rates than if you are a doctor.
So again, this is Ben Shapiro sidestepping the hypothetical. It's Ben Shapiro not addressing it by instead shitting on the workers at this hypothetical pencil factory by saying the labor that they do, despite the fact that it is necessary for the capitalist to own... I do take estrogen. Thank you for asking. The labor that they do is still necessary for the capitalist to make money without doing anything. Now, Ben Shapiro, instead of addressing this hypothetical, sidesteps it by saying, "Hey, well, you're not worth as much as a doctor," which is not what the hypothetical was addressing at all. Notice at no point did this young man say these workers should be paid as much as doctors. Yeah, that's not what he was saying. It wasn't in the hypothetical. The word doctor literally didn't come out of anyone's mouth until Ben Shapiro brought it up.
Pencil together requires is basic use of your prefrontal cortex, then yes, your labor is alienable at lower rates than if you are a doctor. That's not the fault of the person who owns the machinery.
But if you didn't have...
So, again, the reason this young man is now stuttering is that, well, lemon pepper wings, if you knew shit about shit, you would know that estrogen doesn't lower someone's voice. So, I guess just be an asshole for no reason? Anyway. Okay. So, the reason he's flustered is because Ben Shapiro, good old Bean Shapiro, did not address his actual point. So let's see if he can recover here.
Have workers like me and your pencil factory, and you are just one man.
But I have millions of people who are willing to do that voluntarily for me.
You have millions of people willing to do this voluntarily for me. But here's the issue, guys. Again, this does not address the fundamental issue that the guy who, by virtue of just owning something, gets to walk away and profit without doing any actual work. People should own the value of their work. That's the basic argument of socialism, and this is something that Ben Shapiro seems actively allergic to. Because a capitalist who has done no work other than buying something and owning it is then able to walk away with more money by making a profit. And he gets that profit by taking it out of the value that the workers produce. Now, again, Ben Shapiro sidesteps this hypothetical by saying, well, I have millions of people willing to do it for me. Can you please bring up the definition of socialism and explain how you're getting the employees control it with socialism? Okay. The definition of socialism. There are two key components. Number one, workers own the means of production. Number two, you decommodify significant portions of the economy. So those are the two things that make something socialist. And then there are many avenues for workers getting control over the means of production, but what I advocate for is introducing democracy into the workplace via worker co-ops. Worker co-ops are things we already have in the United States. I just think there should be far more of them, and they should become the predominant business model of the United States. So, there you go.
If you're just one person trying to assemble pencils, you're not going to get very far. You need workers. Capital needs labor infinitely more than labor needs capital. That's why you have worker cooperatives where the workers are the ones...
I fundamentally disagree on the distinction between capital and labor. Capital is just a term for money. If you're talking...
No, capital is a term for the means of production. Under capitalism, capitalists own capital. So capital is the means of production, and you can get capital with money. And sometimes money itself can be capital. However, putting capital into the hands of workers so that you can profit is not you doing work. You understand that, right? This is how Jeff Bezos has like a bazillion gajillion dollars, but he doesn't work a bazillion gajillion times harder than the people who like labor in his warehouses, who swelter to death or have to pee in bottles. No, like he just fundamentally doesn't, and he doesn't deserve that much money either. So anyway, automation, is it a bad idea? It's not a bad idea if you have worker co-ops, my dude, because with worker co-ops, all the workers get to benefit from the profits generated by that automation. So automation stops being something workers fear and instead becomes something that workers embrace. Anyway.
Talking about money, money does not grow from the...
Oh, wait. Disorder. Let's see. A system, well, okay. A system of society or group living in which there is no private property. So there's a difference between, and this trips up a lot of people, so don't feel embarrassed by this, but there's a difference between private property and personal property. You would still have personal property. I believe private property would be like owning capital, because capital would be collectively owned. How do worker co-ops solve anything? Well, because collectively the workers decide how the profits and how the profits of the company are used. So, yeah, like disorder under like a socialist system, it's not necessary for like armed guards to come to you and be like, you no longer live in house, get out. Your dog is now meat for the grinder. Like, no, like. This isn't something that happens, that would have to happen. You know, it might be something that has happened. It might be that there have been instances, I believe, like in the USSR, where armed guards came and confiscated things, but it doesn't have to be that way. The same way, like, you can have a capitalist nation, like, Nazi Germany was a capitalist nation, but it was an awful nation. So, yeah, we can do better. That was a better Russian accent. Okay, I'm sorry. What happens if your co-op fails? Yeah, same thing if your business fails. We don't have to make huge changes. So the problem is ultimately the impossibility of stopping socialism from becoming communism, the USSR example. Well, no, because communism is just one extra step on top of socialism, and this is what it is, okay? Communism has workers owning the means of production, has decommodification of, at the very least, large sections of the economy, and then the third aspect that is necessary for it to become communism is the dissolution of the state. Now, I think a lot of people would be hard-pressed to say that the USSR was not a state. Or was a... Sorry, yes, was not a state. The USSR is very much a state. Is China a state right now? Absolutely it is. So, what I advocate for is not the dissolution of the state. What I want to reach is market socialism, and from there, I might be open to other ideas, but for now, this is what I advocate for. Yeah, co-ops of co-ops. Yeah, there are different ways we can do this, and I think as we embrace worker co-ops, we will discover more diverse models for successful worker co-ops. Right now, there are while there are a great many of them, we could do a lot more when it comes to like business planning around worker co-ops. You know. So let's continue.
Ground money.
I forgot where we were in this conversation, so I'm gonna back up.
Person trying to assemble pencils, you're not going to get very far. You need workers. Capital needs labor infinitely more than labor needs capital. That's why you have work.
Yes, because, guys, and this is a simple point. Capitalists need labor in order for their capital to pay off. Otherwise, they're just some schmuck with a bunch of useless raw materials. They need workers to turn those raw materials via their labor into products that are worth being sold. So how do you fairly create a co-op, in your opinion? Well, yeah, largely what I would say is that we would have government loans. We would have a streamlined process to get government loans for worker co-ops. Because also worker co-ops tend to have a higher survival rate than private firms. How do the co-ops make decisions? It's very similar to how a traditional company makes decisions, except that like every quarter or so, workers get together and vote on like the different policies that the company should pursue. Like, you know, we want to use our profits this quarter to increase wages, or we want to use our profits this quarter to, you know, decrease the amount of time we're working, and like set the policy of the company. So this is what we're going to pursue this quarter. And then the people who are in charge, if it's a vertical hierarchy, you know, you still have like a president of the co-op, you still have like a board of directors, perhaps, of the co-op, representative of the different aspects of the whatever industry you're in, and like yeah, it functions like a normal company, except workers control it via a democratic process of some kind.
Worker cooperatives where the workers are the
fundamentally disagree on the distinction between capital and labor. Capital is just a term for money. If you're
yes, there is a distinction between capital and labor. This is just like a weird lie, I guess. Like, you guys understand that it's different to own a factory and not have to really do anything to produce everything the factory produces because you're paying other people to work at the factory, right? Like, and then, but you still make money from owning and running the factory. Yeah. Let's see. Also, wouldn't that make barriers to entry into existing co-ops more difficult? Wait. So the government funds co-ops. How would they decide which co-ops should be funded and which shouldn't? Probably depending on their business model. Like, it would be just like starting a business. It would just be that it would make it easier to start worker co-ops because typically worker co-ops are started by people who have less money. But they tend to be better investments, is the thing. Also, wouldn't that make barriers to entry into existing co-ops more difficult, like unions, for example, limiting how many people can join? I don't think so. That's not what we've seen in worker co-ops that exist right now. Because adding another person to your company will directly affect how much money you get. Well, yeah. Yeah. But there would still, like, that's the same as, like, a traditional company. Like, that, you understand that, right? Like, traditional companies now hire people to do jobs to make more money. So, like, yeah, it would work the same with a worker co-op. I don't understand the distinction you're trying to make. Well, yeah, and guys, I don't want to say that people who own businesses don't work. I think this is something that is very important to make a distinction about. People who own capital do work. They just don't work 500 or 5,000 times harder than the people at their companies. Everyone who works at the company should benefit from the profits of that company. I think this is a very simple idea. I think it is a very equitable idea, and I think that largely it would improve our society quite a bit if this was the case. So yes, capitalists do work, and I'm not ever going to say that they don't. It's just that it is extremely possible for a capitalist to not work and keep making more money. So there you go.
Talking about money, money does not grow from the ground. Money only has value because it was traded for labor at one point, or the products of labor. So if I take my money and I buy machinery, I have invested my labor in doing that because I didn't get the money from nowhere.
Right. You didn't get the money from nowhere. Except, as in the last Ben Shapiro video we watched, money is often directly correlated. How much money you have is directly correlated to the wealth of your family in the United States. And the United States has the least economic mobility of most countries on Earth. So, yeah, people who are born into rich families have more capital. And they have that capital by virtue of being born into a rich family, not because they did more work. So again, the fundamental premise of his idea is wrong.
Even if I got it from my parents didn't get the money from nowhere.
Right. Except, again, you keep going backwards in time. Guess what? Money gains more value over time if it's invested in things that grow in value. It's weird how that works. So people who have more money tend to grow their wealth over time. Like, you guys understand why, like, someone born into a dirt poor black family in the United States or in, like, the south side of Chicago, like, yeah, they're not going to be able to invest in a company. Instead, they have to sell their labor for a basic subsistence living. This is the issue. I fundamentally don't think your freedom should be restricted just because you were born into a wealthier family than someone else. And I fundamentally don't think that your freedom should be restricted just because you haven't worked as long as someone else. We should both be able to pursue what makes us happy and what interests us and what would benefit our communities. These are things that would be fundamentally good. Like, I don't want to say, like, investing money is not a risk, because it is, but I just think that money shouldn't be the thing that is limiting us from taking risks and doing things and having freedom.
People who built the machines required me to trade something of value to them in order for me to obtain the machines. The people who invented the machines required people to pay them in order to get...
Again, all of these requirements are largely because these other people who got paid by someone else needed to sell their labor in order to survive in a capitalist system. Oops.
The patent to that machine so they could build the machine. The problem that I'm seeing in what you're saying is you have still failed. If what you're talking about is a system of voluntarism, you still have not named any area in which we disagree, and yet you're telling me that you're a socialist and I'm a free marketer. So one of us has got this wildly wrong, and I'm pretty sure it's not me.
Okay. Now, one of the things I need to fundamentally point out to you is that Ben Shapiro only ever does this in front of young and impressionable college students, and this is a room full of people who are part of Young America's Foundation, and I'm going to assume it's probably a right-leaning organization, so all of these people in the room already fundamentally agree with Ben Shapiro's framing and point of view, and so this laughter is largely a result of selective a selection bias among the people who are in this room. Now, here's the issue here. This young man has not actually said anything that is not true. He has made good points so far. Now, he might shit the bed in the next minute or two. However, the issue is that he's 100% correct. The system of capitalism can only operate by capitalists taking more value from your work and then paying you less than your work is worth. That's fundamentally the only way capitalism can work, and why we should opt to pursue something that is better than capitalism, that has, at the very least, significantly less exploitation.
The differentiation I draw, and I'm not alone in this, I'm not one person trying to redefine anything. The differentiation I and many others like me draw between socialism and capitalism is that under capitalism, when you as the owner of the factory, you give me a wage. The wage could be $7.25, it could be $15, it could be whatever an hour. Right? But you give me a wage. All the additional profit above the made from selling the pencils or whatever good you produce above what is reinvested into the company ultimately goes to you or the investors, those who own shares in the means of production.
Right.
Under socialism, those people are the workers, and the example I give, again, is cooperative enterprise.
No, those are the people who are investing the risk. So if they carry the risk, then they get the benefit. The owner of the factory carries the risk.
Except we don't have to live in a society where people with money are the only people who can bear risk. This is a fallacy. Ben Shapiro is positing that this is the only way that we could possibly deal with risk. That's not true. It's just not. There are other ways that we can assume risk collectively. We can collectively assume risk. And we can reap collective rewards for that risk. These things are not difficult to wrap your head around, and I really need to stress, again, that everything that this young man said is 100% correct. These are the differences between capital and or capitalism and socialism. Exactly. Bottom-up investment is more efficient and generally more productive in its outcomes.
Before he gets the benefit. The workers in the company you mentioned, if that company were to go bankrupt, they would carry the risk as well as the benefit. If the company goes bankrupt...
Yeah, exactly. This motivates people to work harder at a worker co-op because they collectively assume the risk. Yeah. You guys, don't you understand that, guys? Do you think a cashier at a company that's going bankrupt gives a single shit about your customer experience in a traditional private company? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know who does give a shit, though? A cashier at a company that is a worker co-op and is collectively owned, and that cashier has a fundamental investment in the success of the company. That's someone who's going to break their ass to make sure that you're having a good experience in their store. Again, a flawed premise leads him to a flawed conclusion, and that's the same with many people in that room.
And this guy has to pay off all of his debt, The worker may lose his job, but he's not the one who's going to incur the debt of having gone bankrupt. If you incur...
Wait. Ramen, I can't tell if you're talking to me or not, but if you are, if that is true, why isn't it more common and more profitable? If that was the case, those businesses would be the bigger ones. Well, that's the thing. We haven't had, until relatively recently, a way of collectively investing. Like, this is a reality. Like, we haven't had that, or we haven't had common investments. However, I do think that, like, we could set up better systems to have common investments in worker co-ops. But all that would take is a group of people to do it. True, but usually the people who are in a position to invest collectively when it comes to a capitalist system are capitalists. And they tend to not want to invest in worker co-ops. And yeah, it'd be really nice if mental health was a human right. I agree. Extremely base take from Easy Now, Bessie.
Risk, then you're the one who pays the downside. The worker does not pay the downside. Okay, it is the investor who pays the downside, who invested in all the machinery, who sunk millions of dollars in...
Man, Ben Shapiro is making a good case for maybe collective investment instead of the capitalist taking on all the risk and then reaping all the rewards. Maybe collectively investing in this company so that everyone can collectively reap the rewards would be a good idea. Really makes you think.
Your labor productive, because guess what? Your labor is without that machinery. Gunk. Nothing. You don't have a pencil to put together. You don't got the wood. You don't got the paint. You don't got the rubber. You don't got the metal. You got nothing. Right? You're sitting there, standing outside, twiddling your thumbs. It required somebody to invest. Who do you think put more in? The guy who spent millions of dollars buying all the machinery, leasing the place, making sure there was a management structure, doing the LLC formation, making sure all the tax code was in compliance, or you standing outside because you can stick a piece of graphite into a piece of wood?
Who do you think contributed more to a company? The person who did all this work at the beginning and then could fuck off for like the rest of like a decade? Or the person who spent a decade working in that factory? Who do you think did more work for this company? Do you guys honestly think that Jeff Bezos did more work for Amazon than any of his employees in his warehouses? Do you guys honestly think that? Do you guys think Jeff Bezos worked 300 million times more than any of the workers at one of his factories? And that's, by the way, 300 million is just being conservative. Let's say 3 billion times more than the workers working at his factories or warehouses. No, he didn't. He put in some work, he put in some money to assume some risk, and then he fucked off, and now he's like a 600 billionaire or something like that. I don't know how much money he has off the top of my head. And yeah, he received a government bailout. He received a collective investment from the government, and he's the wealthiest man on the planet. So, like, yeah, we already collectively invest in people. It's just that in a capitalist system, we collectively invest in capitalists who don't need more money. Aesop Hatter, I'm glad you're finding this helpful, okay? I'm glad you're finding this helpful. So Jeff Bezos is bad because he had an idea and ran with it initially? Well, no, Jeff Bezos is bad because he exploits hundreds of thousands of workers in order to assume an incredible, like, more wealth than anyone on the history of the planet could even imagine. Like, that's why Jeff Bezos is bad. So, yeah, like, I don't know. I don't think that Jeff Bezos really contributed all that much to society, right? Like, yeah, he was sitting in a room one day and said, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if people could buy things online? Wow, what a revolutionary concept. Wow. Whoa, mind-blowing. No. And then who actually did the work to set up Amazon? Who actually does the work at Amazon to make sure you get your packages, to make sure that the website works? It's not fucking Jeff Bezos. Yeah. These people take advantage of us for our labor and then act like we should owe them more. Yeah, anyone could have developed his system and made profit. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think we should value the people who did the work to develop that system. Yeah, like the people who actually did the work to make it, absolutely. They should be paid for their work. Well, but here's the thing, Ryan. You have to give people your labor in a capitalist society, otherwise you die. If you don't work under capitalism, you die. Yeah, like, I know it's a weird idea, but if you don't work under capitalism, you go homeless, you go hungry, and then you die in the gutter. This is how our system works. Would it please you if Amazon offered all their employees payments in stocks plus a base salary? No, but what would please me is if employees collectively owned Amazon. That's what I would like. Yeah, workers deserve the value of their labor. Yes. I don't care if employees are compensated very well. Employees deserve the value of their labor. And I think you can more effectively do that with a worker co-op model. I don't care if you can find like a capitalist like company that does this well and pays people and treats them all very nicely. That company would treat them better if it was a worker co-op. Fundamentally, this is the issue. I personally been stuffling with the idea of capitalism, whether or not it's best for my country. I've always been pro-capitalism, but my views on it have been quickly changing. There are better ways and ideas that I never knew existed. Absolutely. And here's the thing. I believe that market socialism is better than capitalism. And I believe everyone should have extreme suspicions of everyone who tells you that a better system is not possible. Because they're probably trying to sell you something.